Okay, good evening. We're starting Maseches Gittin. Maseches Gittin holds a very unique place in halacha. It is a mitzvah saseh shel Torah to get divorced, which is extremely odd. And the pasuk says v'chasab l'sefer krisus, and that means that under the warranted circumstances, where the only reasonable option is to get divorced, then becomes a mitzvah d'oraisa. So it also makes it impossible when a person is trying to have a good marriage and it works out that they have a good marriage, then they can't fulfill that mitzvah. So like these fancy discussions, should we get divorced and remarry just for the sake of being the kind? No, it's not a mitzvah you pursue. It is a mitzvah that is employed under crisis circumstances, and at that point it becomes a mitzvah. Right? So other religions don't have any outlets for this, which is not appropriate. Raising good children under terrible parenting is it's usually a bad combo, and the healthy marriage is a major piece in that. Okay. Let's jump into this very, very unique Masechta and unique mitzvah. This opening Mishnah is speaking about a case of shlichus. We know the halacha is shluchos shel adam kamo, so that I'm allowed to appoint a shlichus to perform a mitzvah on my behalf. And one of those things is to perform a divorce. So if I wanted to get a divorce, I could ask a shliach to deliver a get to my wife. So the Gemara says, "Hamevi get mi medinas hayam." If a get is being brought from outside of the country, Rashi says medinas hayam on the top line, kol chutz la'aretz karilei Medinas Hayam Barmi Bavel. The only exception is Bavel. So Eretz Yisrael and Bavel are on the same plane as it relates to get, and every other place outside of Eretz Yisrael is considered Chutz La'aretz. And when that happens, the shliach, when he delivers the get to the woman, Sarach Shiyomer B'fanai Nechtav U'B'fanai Nechtam. Get used to this phrase. Learn Maseches Gittin. You know this phrase will be used hundreds of times throughout the Masechta, where when the shliach delivers. When the shliach delivers a get from outside of Eretz Yisrael to the wife who is inside of Eretz Yisrael, at least that's how it appears according to the Tanna Kama, the shliach has to say, "B'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtam." This was written in front of me, and it was signed in front of me. We know, of course, that a get has to be signed, has to be written lishma, as we'll soon see in the Gemara. The Tosfos over here on the top of the page discusses why is it that get is the word get, and the gematria of get is 12, and that's how many. If you look in a Sefer Torah, if you after Breshit to Breshis and Shmos, there's 4 lines of blank parchment. After Shmos and Vayikra, 4 more blank lines. After Vayikra before Bamidbar, 4 more. And there's it's not that much. It's just 5 books. Huh? And you have to leave out Devarim.
No, we're starting new Sefer.
We're starting new Sefer on Shabbos. So there's a lot of shitas in the Bale in the first Tosfos here on the page. Have a read on at your leisure. And the Mishnah continues with the Shita of Rabban Gamliel Omer. He says, "Af hamevi min harekem u'min hacheger." Even cities that are right over the border, it doesn't matter. Once you're outside of Eretz Yisrael, you're done, and therefore you need to say the phrase "b'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtam." This verification process, if you would, and we'll figure out what this is talking about in the Gemara. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, "Afilu mikfar ludim lelud." Even from Kfar Ludim to Lud, these are 2 cities like the twin cities. They just have a border that runs through the middle. But the zip codes are different. The one's Jordan and one's Israel, whatever the line is, doesn't matter. Even if you're going across the street, but across the street is in Eretz Yisrael and you're coming from outside, doesn't matter. You have to say b'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtam. So the Tanna Kama seems to say that when you're bringing a get from Medinas Hayam, the Chachamim argue a little bit. The Chachamim omer me'enu tzorach shomer b'fanai nechtav b'fanai nechtam ela maybe mi Medinas Hayam veha molich. If you bring from one state to another state in Chutz La'aretz, then still tzarich sheyomer b'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtam. Rashbag Omer afilu mehegmonia lehegmonia, even from one province to another province, even if it's not a Medina, it's from Cook County to Lake County. Well, again, I don't know if the mashal is appropriate, but from one small locale to another small locale where there's different leadership. A hegmon is a governor or a ruler of some kind. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. And this is a fascinating Gemara, which has possibly very wide implications because it's giving the boundaries of how we define Eretz Yisrael as it relates to get. Because we know that from outside of Eretz Yisrael to inside, you have to say, a shliach has to say, b'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtam. So how do we define Eretz Yisrael? So says the Gemara, we're going to make a box. Rabbi Yehuda Omer me'rekem le'mizrach. From the city of Rechem on the eastern border, Virechem Kim Mizrach, and Rechem is outside. It's like the outside. It's like the eastern outside version of Israel. So ad velo ad bichlal. I guess it's in another parlance. Me Ashkelon l'darom, Ashkelon on the southern end. Ve Ashkelon kid darom, and Ashkelon is outside of Eretz Yisrael. Ashkelon was one of the recipients of many rockets over the last many days, and that's for these purposes, that's not part of Eretz Yisrael. There's a massive discussion in the poskim about Eilat. Eilat is a big discussion in the poskim about whether or not you keep 2 days there if you're ben chutz la'aretz, because it's really seemingly not part of historical Eretz Yisrael. Big machlokas. And as well, may Akko Litzafon. Akko is, of course, a very northern city, and that's in the north. And Ve'akko Kitzafon, it's considered like the outside. This is the box. This, if you were to build a rectangle that looked like this, everything is a direct line. The Gemara doesn't discuss that, but that is what we are saying, that it has to be Eretz Yisrael. We don't say B'fanai nechta v'B'fanai nechtam. The shliach doesn't have to say that. And if the shliach is coming from outside, if I live in I don't know, Greece, and I'm sending divorce papers to my wife in Israel, so then I would have, when the shliach shows up, he would have to say to my wife B'fanai nechta v'B'fanai nechtam. This verification process, we don't know why we have to say. Yeah, that's a big machlokas Amoraim, which we will dig into deeply today.
But if he's in Eretz Yisrael, he doesn't have to say it, and he's outside of Eretz Yisrael, he doesn't have to say it also.
Well, one of the shitas in the Mishnah was that if you're Hamevi mi Medina the Medina b'Medina Sayam tzarich sheyomar, you do have to say it.
No, but I'm saying if they're in the same town or whatever, then that's not necessary.
It depends who you hold like. V'afilu mehegmonia lehegmonia. It depends. You have to see which time.
They both live in the city of Chicago. They both live in the city of Skokie. That's still.
Then they don't have to say it.
Right. That's
right. But once you switch provinces, even as simple as, let's say, Cook County versus Lake County, which in our case is probably the right example. Zip codes are irrelevant. That's not different rulers, right? We have different alder. We have aldermanic neighborhoods. Do we view that as the 50th ward? Is that our distinction? Is it county level? We'd have to ask these shilas halacha l'maisa if it ever came up. We don't do this, but
the logic that you wouldn't have to say within the province or within the.
We'll get into that in the Gemara. That's part of the machlokas in the Amoraim. The Mishnah says, Reb Meir Omer, Akko ke'eretz Yisrael Gittin, that even though Akko is really not part of Eretz Yisrael, but as it relates to the world of Gittin, we will treat Akko like Eretz Yisrael. Maybe get be'eretz Yisrael, if a person brings a get within the 4 walls of Eretz Yisrael, then Eino tzarich sheyomar b'fanei nechta v'b'fanei nechtam. And v'im yesh alav orim, if there are those who say they're me'orer, they raise a concern about a get, then yiskayim b'chosma, we have to then verify the signatures to make sure that the chasimas are all correct. That's the end of the Mishnah. Now we're going to learn a very important machlokas Amoraim to try and understand what was this takana, what was this injunction, that when the shliach delivers a get on behalf of the husband, he has to say the sentence, B'fanai nechta v'b'fanai nechtam. He's saying to the wife, you should just know, Rebbitzin, I saw that this was written, I saw that it was signed. What is going on, or why does that need to happen? So my timer, bottom line of Beis Mid Aleph, the Gemara says, Rabba Omar, what's the reason why? Lefi she'ein bekin lishma. Take a look at Rashi. Lefi she'ein bekin lishma, ein b'nei medinas hayam b'nei Torah, ve'ein yodin shetzarach lichtov haget l'shem ha'isha. Let's say that my name is Hillel Pinchas, my wife is Rachel Tzipora. So let's say that if you have Gittin that have the same exact name, same exact date of all the information is identical, so that you can't use that get for another person. The get has to be lishma. And in Chutz La'aretz, the presumption was that people were Amaratim. Fairly fair assumption. It's not such a bad guess. It's not such a bad guess. It's pretty reasonable. What?
You know the Republic. I think I know the Republic.
So
It's a weird juxtaposition. I know somebody that's from the Muslims and everyone in Israel is fine.
it's more looking at the Batei Din, as we'll soon see. But the Batei Din in Chutz La'aretz were assumed to not be as knowledgeable. If you can imagine the Batei Din that we have for Ataras Nedarim, that's jokesters. That's a game, and it works. But yeah, it's just, I'm just saying, like when I'm sitting there listening to Atar, I'm like, it doesn't. So that's what Rashi says in the name of Rabbah. Why is it that the shliach, when he delivers the get from Medina Sayam to Eretz Yisrael, why does he have to say b'fanei nechta b'fanei nechtam? His verification is overriding a concern. What's the concern? That in Chutz La'aretz, they are not b'nei Torah, they don't know halacha, and they're not makbid in the dinim of lishma. And this is based on the pasuk of V'chasav la sefer krisus. We have to write a sefer krisus la for her. I don't care if the couple A and couple B have the same set of names. You cannot use the get for one woman for another person, no matter what. Therefore, he says to the wife as he hands her the get, "B'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtam," I know this is for you. The concern that we're overriding is a concern of lishma. Was the get written properly? Rava Omar differently. Rava says, no. Lifi she'ein edim mitzuyin l'kaimo. Because there aren't a lot of edim where we are now in Eretz Yisrael, because I'm delivering in Eretz Yisrael. Nobody here can verify the edim signatures on the document. The document was written in Medina Sayyam and Chutz La'aretz. And one of the ways that you would verify a document is by saying, well, let's check the signatures. Okay, I recognize his handwriting. No one's going to say that in Eretz Yisrael. Rashi highlights that we're under an assumption that there wasn't a lot of transport, a lot of travel, ein shiur mitzuyin, that there wasn't a lot of people going back and forth. And therefore, what was Rava's concern? Rava's concern was that there's no way to verify the signatures because it was signed in Chutz La'aretz and delivered in Eretz Yisrael. And how do we verify that concern? How do we override that concern? By saying, don't worry, I know we can't verify the signatures, but don't worry, says the shliach to the Rebbetzin, b'fanai nechtav b'fanai nechtam. He hands her the get and she's divorced. My beinayhu, what is the difference between the reason of Rabba, which is a fundamental concern of lishma, versus the reason of Rava, which is a fundamental concern of not being able to verify signatures? The Gemara presents three nafkaminas. Labrius. Ika beinayhu da'asyuha beitrei. Let's say that it wasn't one shliach who brought it, it was two. Well, according to that approach, Rava has no concern anymore. Rava's whole concern is that there's no one to verify the signatures. These are two Eidim who can verify the signatures. They're the Shlichim. They watch the thing being signed. But according to Rabba, there's still a concern of Lishma. So that would be one nafkamina where Rabba would say, you still need to say B'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtam. You haven't solved my concern of Lishma. But according to Rabba, you don't have to say B'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtam. Why? Because there's nothing to worry about. We were the witnesses to the signatures. We verify that the signatures are valid. Inami, says the Gemara, mi Medina le Medina be'eretz Yisrael. If you have a case scenario of Medina le Medina be'eretz Yisrael, so there we're not concerned about Lishma. Rabba would say in such a case, it's Eretz Yisrael. No concerns about B'fanai nechtam or B'fanai nechtam, because Lishma is not a problem. However, if there's no traveling, as Rashi highlights, from the north to the south of the country, then recognition of signatures is still a problem. And Rava would say B'fanai nechtam or B'fanai nechtam. And the third nafkamina on Beis 4 lines down, Inami B'osa Medina B'Medina Sayyam, all in one Medina, but in Medina Sayyam, where Rabba will have a concern of Lishma, and Rava won't have a concern of recognizing signatures, and therefore Rabba would say B'fanai nechtam B'fanai nechtam, and Rava would not. These are three nafkaminas. Now we're going to ask a question on Rabba's shiur. Let's remember that Rabba says our primary concern is lishma, and when a husband is delivering a get from Medina Sayyam to Eretz Yisrael with a shliach, the shliach has to say B'fanai nechtam to override our concerns of lishma. The Gemara asks, "Will the Rabba de Omar lefi she'ein bekin lishma?" According to Rabba, who says he's concerned about lishma, wow, lishma is a very important halacha. You can't just write any get you want; it has to be lishma. If that's true, liboy trey. Then why are you saying that only one witness should deliver? Make it two. If you're concerned about lishma, let's override it with two witnesses. Like any other form of edus. If we need a get to be lishma, and you're concerned about the get being lishma, this one Joe Shmo Shliach who walks in and says, "Don't worry, b'fanai nechtam, you're only one guy. Who cares about you? We're worried about a dindo rice of lishma. You're one Jew telling me, oh no, don't worry about it. It's not a problem." So says the Gemara, and this is a massive sugya, massive. It sounds so simple because it's only 4 words. And we believe in this and we hold like it halachically. Says the Gemara, don't worry. We do trust the one shaliach to override the concern of lishma because eid echad ne'eman be'isurin. We believe one aid when it comes to the world of isurin. Why can you eat in my house? Because eid echad ne'eman be'isurin. And the Gemara in Chulin describes the threshold of that. If you have someone who's not really Shomer Shabbos, he's not Ne'eman anymore. That person no longer has a Ne'eman to eat in their homes anymore because you're only Ne'eman if you're Ne'eman. But if you're not Shomer Machal Shabbos, you're not Ne'eman anymore. Okay, this comes up in Bris Milah because the brisim aren't kosher. If the person is not Shomer Shabbos, Mumar L'Davar Echad, even if they say, too bad, I'm wearing shatnez, they're done. The brisim are not kosher. It's a big problem. It's a big problem. Okay, so Eid Echad Ne'eman B'Yisurin. Says the Gemara, wait one second. Amor de Amrinan, when is it that we say Eid Echad Ne'eman B'Yisurin? When do we trust one aid to solve a biblical issue? That's in the following case. Kigon Chaticha, we have a piece of meat, Safek Shel Chelev, Safek Shel Shuman. And I don't know what the meat is. It could be that the meat is 100% kosher, and it could be that the meat is 100% treif. Nobody asked Brandis over here for a hechsher, by the way, just pointing out. Everybody fresh like there's no tomorrow. It's fine. This was all purchased at in the back section of Jewel from the back butcher. You know, he saved a couple of bucks. But because it's Eid Echad Ne'eman B'Yisurin, everybody can fresh without any worries. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to talk about it. It's totally fine. So if it's true that typically Eid Echad Ne'eman B'Yisurin is only true when there's a suffix about the piece of meat, it could be that the meat is 100% fine, and it could be that it's not, but that's the lo ischazik yisura. Fundamentally, that meat could be fine. But here, aval hacha, when you have a woman who's married, she's eishes ish, the ischazik yisura, the eishes ish. You're going to tell me that when I know she's married now, his edus is going to make her a non-eishes ish. You're taking a vadai iser and turning it into heter. That's not when Eid Echad Ne'eman B'Yisurin should work. She's have a davar shebe'erva. Once we're in the camp of erva, the ain davar shebe'erva pachos mishnayim kasha on the Gemara. How can you tell me that Eid Echad is Ne'eman B'Yisurin? Eid Echad is Ne'eman B'Yisurin to verify a suffix. But I'm not verifying a suffix. She's 100% eishes ish right now. I know she's married. So you can't tell me, oh, here comes the knight in shining armor. This shliach just showed up and said, B'fanei nechtam, b'fanei nechtam, problem solved. That doesn't solve a problem. You just made a woman who is a vadai isha into a non-isha. So eishes ish. Doesn't work. Says the Gemara, you're 100% correct. And therefore we have to re-understand Rabbah. Let's re-understand Rabbah. Really, says the Gemara, ro b'kianhein. Most people, even in Chutz La'aretz, were undermining what we've learned already. Really, ro b'kianhein. What? It undermines Rabbah at the top. Rashi was explaining Rabbah's svara, and now based on this very powerful question that we just asked, we're now rewiring and re-understanding Rabbah. We thought Rabbah meant to say that in Chutz La'aretz there are no B'nai Torah. That's not true. Really, ro b'kianhein. Most people in most places are b'kian. They know that a get has to be written lishma. Ve'afilu the Rab Meir d'chayish l'miuta. Even according to Rab Meir, who holds that there is a minority group of people who are amoratzem and who take matters into their own hands and they write Gittin and they don't know what they're talking about. So even in that case, we're not so worried because stam sifri dedaini migmar gmiri. Stam Sifra Dedaini, the average sofer of a bezdin, migmar gmiri, he's well trained. And really, midei oraisa, we don't need to say b'fanei nechtav u'b'fanei nechtav. It's only a din derabanan. And says the Gemara, v'rabanan hu de'atzruch. Only the rabbis require the repeating of b'fanei nechtav u'b'fanei nechtav. Why? Because we want to remove that 1% case scenario. Rashi at the bottom of Beis Mid Beis explains the case we're concerned about. Rashi says, why do the rabbis require of this shaliach to say b'fanei nechtam b'fanei nechtam? Because l'meichash, what are we concerned about? L'meichash l'nilsa mishum de'ika de'ashkach kasav v'omed. Maybe I'll find a document that's ready to go. Kegon shenichtav l'shem echad mibnei iro sheshmo kishmo ushma kishmo v'nimlach milagarish. So if I make a shtar gerushin, it says my name and my wife's name, and then we patch things up, a little couples therapy, everything is fine and good. So I throw out the get in the garbage. My neighbors behind me have the same exact name. They don't, but let's say they did. But, oh, perfect. You know what? Rough day with the wife. Here you go. So because of that oddball, one-off case scenario, the shliach therefore has to say, b'fanei nechtam, b'fanei nechtam, this get was written specifically for you as lishma. And v'hacha, why do we allow one aid? Because mishumi guna akilu barabanan, we don't want a woman to ever be trapped, and therefore one aid, namely one shaliach, is sufficient to deploy this single line of b'fanei nechtam to release her. Says the Gemara, this is really a side question, but it's an important side question. You said that it's a kula that we rely on this one aid of b'fanei nechtam. but that kula can be a chumrah. And let's see how. It says the Gemara, Hi kulahu, allowing one aid of befanai nechtam, that one guy to say that line is a kula. Really, it could be a kula, it can be a chumrah as well. Because the imitzrachas leitrei, had it been that two Eidim showed up to verify her get, so then lo asi bal me'arer upasile, then no one can undo the validity of the get, and she'll get the result that she wanted, which was to get out of this marriage. But chad, if there was only one person, which we just said is how we paskin, and it is how we paskin, then asi bal me'arer upasile, then the husband can try and uproot things and keep her in aguna. So it's not necessarily the case that mishumi guna kilu barabanan, that only one person is strong enough. Maybe it's better that there should be two. And that way she'll definitely end up with the divorce that she desires. Says the Gemara on Gimel Amud Aleph, really that's not a concern. Why not? Because the Gemara says, Kevan de Omar Mar, since, as we will learn in a couple of blot on Daf Hey, that bifnei kama nos nola, in front of how many people is the shliach giving the get? Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chanina, Chadam, Rabbi Bifnei Beis, V'Chadam, Rabbi Bifnei Gimel, because he's giving it over in front of a number of people. So then the husband, me'ikara me'dakdai, he'll be very, very careful with the get. But lo asi le'oruei nafshe, and he's not going to cause all of this trouble and try to be me'arer and undermine and undercut the get. Therefore, we're not concerned about that. And therefore, yes, mishum iguna kilu barabanan, and there's no concerns about him coming in the 11th hour and trying to ruin the get. All of this was our question on Rabbah, and we've now re-understood Rabbah. It's no longer the case that Chutz La'aretz people are Amaratzim. It's really just that oddball scenario of finding a get in the garbage that is the same name as the couple who threw out the get in the garbage. That's the only reason why Rabbah says that we need to say Befanai Nechtav u Befanai Nechtav. Let's dig a little bit deeper. The Gemara says with the Rava was the second shita that we saw. Rava said that the reason why we say Befanai Nechtav u Befanai Nechtav is because to Amar Lefi She'ein Eidim Mitzuyin L'Kaimo, because we're concerned about the fact that we don't have two Eidim to verify the signatures. We don't know how to verify signatures. When you have someone coming from Europe and you live in Israel, I don't know the people in Europe. I don't know what their handwriting looks like. I don't know anything about them. How can I verify their signatures? Therefore, we say B'fanei Nechtav, but B'fanei Nechtav. That's really not a good svara to allow one shaliach to say B'fanei Nechtav, but B'fanei Nechtav. Really, it should be Liboy Trey. Why don't we require two? After all, Midi Dehavi Akim Shtaris Dalma. In general, when we're Mekayim Shtaris, we need two people. So why here, if Rava is really concerned about being Mekayim Shtar, then why doesn't Rava require two Eidim to say B'fanei Nechtav B'fanei Nechtav? The Gemara answers with the same bomb of a sugya of Eid Echad Naaman B'Yisur. And don't worry, Eid Echad is Naaman. Asks the Gemara here the same question it asked on Rava. Eimar de'amrinan Eid Echad Naaman B'Yisurin. When is it that we say that we trust one aid? That's only kigon chaticha safek shel chelev safek shel shuman. We have a piece of meat. There's a chance that it's 100% kosher, and there's a chance that it's 100% treif. But at least there's a chance that it's kosher. But in those cases, lo ischazek yisura. We don't have to assume that it's definitely aser. Aval hacha, but here by a woman who's married, ischazek yisura, because she's married, and therefore to eshes ish habe davar shebe'erva, vein davar shebe'erva pachos mibeis. So then I don't understand the shita of Rava. How can you say Eid Echad Naaman B'Yisurin if we know that Eid Echad Naaman B'Yisurin only overrides a case of Safek Shuman, Safek Chelev? Doesn't work by Ischazek Yisura. That won't work by a woman. So says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. And unlike Rava, where we had to re-understand Rava, that's not happening here. Rava's shita is maintained. We're just explaining it more. Bidin, who really, technically speaking, and on a din d'oraisa level, debekim shtaros nami lo liboy. Really, when we're verifying documents, you do not need two eidim. One aid is actually sufficient. Kid Reish Lakish. What did Reish Lakish teach us? A third of the way down on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. Dama Reish Lakish, eidim achasumen ala shtar. When you have eidim who sign a document, once the ink hits the paper, nasu kamisha nechkara idusim bebezdin. Mida oraisa. Once they sign the document, it's as though they've been verified by Bezdin, and that document is now in full force, whatever the document is. Signatures don't need verification, midoraisa. Midoraisa, like Reish Lakish teaches us, the second the pen dries, you're done. The document is well and good. They're really v'rabbanan hu da'atzrach. In our case, we don't need verification of this document from Chutz La'aretz because, as the Gemara said, it's nasu k'mishen echkar edusim bebezdin. The rabbis require it. V'hacha mishum iguna kilu barabanan. And here, because of Iguna, we allow only one. Only midrabanan do we require the verification of the document, but we don't need two eidim for that. One will suffice. The Gemara asks the same question that we asked above on Rabbah. Hi, Kula, how can you say that that's a Kula? After all, Achumra, same exact line. The mitzrachas letre, because if it were to be that there were two people that would protect the wife, loasi balama'ar pasile, then he couldn't ruin the document. And therefore, Chad, had there only been one person, then asi balama'ar pasile. But with only one person who's a shaliach, then that could leave her in a very difficult situation if the husband is ma'arer. It says the Gemara, same answer. Don't worry. Kevan de Amar Mars, we'll see on Daf Hey Bifnei Kama Nosnala. How many people is the shliach giving the get in front of? Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Chanina have a machlokes. Chadamar Bifnei Shnayim, Chadamar Bifnei Gimel. Meikar Meidak Daiv Lo Asi Lo Rei Nafshi. The husband's not going to do a poor job of writing this document. He'll be embarrassed by the time he hands it out. Everyone's going to call him out and say you're an Amaretz. You don't know what you're talking about. So we're not really worried about that, and therefore, yes, Mishum Iguna Kilu Barabanan, and we're not concerned about that. Let's do a little bit more. We'll stop. You know what? It's actually late. So we'll stop here. We'll be able to catch up on Shabbos. No problem. We'll be fine. So we're going to stop at Virava, which is 2/3 of the way down, which is a relatively clean break. And Mir Tashem will pick up on Shabbos an hour before Mincha. Wishing you all a beautiful night.